Um, so, Nishit requested me to set a little bit of context for this discussion. And in his introduction about me, he also mentioned my, I don't remember the exact word that he used, but my deep interest in cultivating industry academia engagement. Now, that's a fundamental premise of education at BITS Pilani, and that's something that the Institute as a whole subscribes to. In particular, this division called the Work Integrated Learning Programs Division is it's about 46 years old. And what we have done for the last 46 years is to work with industry in ensuring that employed professionals have a way of reskilling, upskilling, and raising their educational qualification level without having to leave the place of work. And since we are a university and we believe that to create any fundamental change, you need to provide education which is foundational in nature and not just skills which help you address specific problems. We have been conducting formal education programs, but very specifically also aimed at raising the skill levels of the people that are enrolled with us. The other thing that we have always had as a point to keep in mind is to not to displace them from their frame of place of work, so that they continue to remain employed. They don't have to leave their education and come in. And one of the ways that we've been able to do that is by adopting technology pervasively in the education process. And I think there are some things that we have done which are quite unique and fairly extraordinary in nature, even if I say so myself. Now, with the advent of AI and at the scale that it has begun to pervade our very existence, I think we were a fairly early entrant into the space of educating working professionals in the space of AI. And we've been running a program, particularly a master's level program in artificial intelligence for the last 2+ years, 2.5, 3 years or so. But now let me speak a little bit more in general. So there are only 3 or 4 points that I want to make. The first point, and these are at different levels in the sense that there is something which the individual has to carry away. There is something that educational institutions have to. There is something that employing organizations have to. And there is something that governments and bodies at large, which are responsible towards society in a much larger way, have to carry away from this discussion. So as far as individuals are concerned, this is, while it is qualitatively different, this is not very unlike any other technological revolution that has taken place. That is insofar as the individual is concerned. And therefore, the concern of being rendered redundant is something that I think should be faced by just making sure that you equip yourself with the necessary skills in order to assume new job roles which augment and strengthen what you have been performing all along. And the key to doing that is by not just equipping yourself with a few tools, but to pursue education in whatever manner, whether on any of the platforms or in a formal educational sense. Pursue something which instructs you foundationally, and therefore you are able to address what's at the base of the AI revolution, while at the same time equipping yourself with tools, because tools will be here today, tools will change tomorrow, and so on, but what you learn foundationally will not change. At the institutional level, I think educational institutions have a very critical role to perform in ensuring not just that the programs that they offer to their students who are enrolled with them are of this nature that make them very strong foundationally, but also try to raise the level of access and equitable access to education, particularly in the space of AI, in this age where the pervasiveness of AI is increasing, every day and at a pace that is almost frightening. Organizations have a responsibility in fostering a culture of learning and development within, and ensuring that rather than look at a hire and fire model where you recruit people who can carry out certain tasks for you and then of course get rid of them when they complete that task, you prepare your workforce to face the challenges as they arise. And that is something which is going to require maturity of leadership at an organizational level and a strategic vision which will make sure that you remain a leader as an organization. And of course, governments and other public bodies have a much larger role to play in all of this, in part by investing in education, and in particular in education in AI, but also in influencing educational institutions and employers to fulfill their responsibilities. However, along with the challenges and opportunities that AI brings in, I think we have to also recognize that the world today is in a state of flux, and it is in that context also that we should look at this AI revolution. The nation state is actually transforming. It is questionable whether nation states will remain what they are. The ability of the ordinary individual to influence what happens is actually waning, and that's something that one has to think seriously about, and how to ensure that the large majority of us will have a say in what is happening. The world is going back towards a coal-fired economy. And last but not the least, there are corporations today which are much bigger than nation states, and it's very clear where their interests lie. And therefore, it is all the more critical that we as citizenry, not just of the country but of the world, educational institutions as carriers of the responsibility of ensuring that there is a well-informed citizenry, and organizations which recognize their responsibility in the larger context of the world as a whole, fulfill whatever we have to do, and that's the context in which today's discussion will take place. But it will take place in the context that we are best equipped to deal with, and that is in the space of the education of working professionals in particular and education in general. So with those few words, I hand the stage back to Nishit. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sundar, for those introductory words. And I think the stage is pretty well set for taking forward our discussion on this topic. As Professor Sundar rightly mentioned, cracking the AI skill code is not just about learning tools. Because as he said in his own words, tools come and go. It's about foundational knowledge and the role of educational institutions in driving that. The rest of our session today is divided into two parts. We'll have an expert panel coming on stage talking about how pervasive AI has become and how it's impacting industries across the entire spectrum. But I'll have to wait a little because I'll continue to hold center stage for some more time and maybe delve a little bit more on this topic of cracking the AI skill code and expand a little bit more about the things that Professor Sundar uh, just outlaid out for us. So I think for the rest of the session today, I'll actually pick two personas, and we'll see how these personas play out in the modern era that we are approaching. And on a lighter note, I do believe that when you have a double role to play in any movie, you end up earning double the amount of money. I hope playing that double persona helps me the same way. Anyway, so I'm going to pick up a couple of personas over here to help drive home the point. One is that of a professional, an employee, who's looking at how the environment is changing and how AI is transforming the workplace, which he once thought he completely understands. And today, the transformation, while it's exciting because technology always excites us, it's also to an extent creating an element of fear. I hope everybody agrees to that, that no matter how exciting technology may sound, it does introduce a small element of fear in all of us. So that's the persona of a employee, of a working professional that I'm going to carry along as we discuss the next few slides. But then it's also equally important to look at the persona of a leader today, because I think a leader has a bigger role to play in the environment today. And in reshaping the workplaces and making them ready for the AI era. And I think when you look at leaders, right, they'll not project fear. But believe me when I say deep within, even leaders have that small element of fear which actually makes them think, what if I get it wrong? Right? What is the right approach to take so that the organization moves in a direction that is the right direction and be ready for the AI era? So those are the two personas I'm going to use during my discussion today, and we'll start by picking up the persona of an engineer, a working professional, who's now contemplating what is it that he should look at to reskill or get ready for the AI workspace. And in order to understand that, we'll just start by looking at some of the key characteristics which define an AI-ready professional. I mean, AI-ready is a term that we've listened to and heard in different contexts. I'm using it in the context of an AI-ready professional. What are the characteristics of an AI-ready professional? And we'll see that an AI-ready professional is not just about capability. I'm not saying capability is overrated. Capability is necessary, it's important. But having an AI-ready professional is all about an intersection between capability and mindset. So an AI-ready professional has to be extremely adaptable. In the industry, we use the term fungible. The idea that I can work today on a particular project and then move on to a new project which requires different kind of skills, uses different kind of tools, and yet I have the foundational knowledge and I'm equipped to move around in a very seamless manner. So that is what the industry requires, a very adaptable AI-ready professional. Now, how do you become that flexible or adaptable? Continuous learning is an essential part of the modern workplace engineer. You have to continuously hone up your skills, keep on learning. On-the-job learning has always been promoted in the industry, but it's even more important in the era today. One thing which engineers can bank on more in this era of artificial intelligence is their strength in emotional intelligence. This is one place where I think everybody agrees that as humans, we probably are at a better standing when it comes to AI. Right? We have a better emotional intelligence which helps us connect better with our teams. And also, not just with team members, but also with agentic AI systems, the systems which are going to be part and parcel of our teams going forward. Lastly, the importance of being tech savvy cannot be understated. it is extremely important to be hands-on, important to adopt technology without an element of fear. Now, at this point, I'm actually very inclined to talk about a small conversation that I had coming to this venue in the morning yesterday. And it's quite interesting because I was in an Uber coming to this venue, and the driver evidently did see my destination and realized that I'm going to the AI summit. So after a while, he took the courage to ask me, "Sir, what is AI? Is it a new type of a computer?" And I am pretty amused with the question, but I take a while to first understand a little of what is his level of understanding in general about the space. And it seems he's not a very educated person, of course, and he can hardly or barely read and write. So in very simple terms, I explained to him all about automation and how AI is driving automation and what it means for the workplaces at large. And being an intelligent fellow is what I could make out later. He immediately asks me, and that element of fear comes out. He says, "Sir, is it going to take away our jobs?" So I have to take a larger perspective then, and I have to tell him how economies work and how automation drives productivity, how productivity helps the GDP grow, how value gets created in a system, and eventually that value gets distributed amongst all of us as being part of the system. And how jobs don't go away. They change. They move to different kind of jobs, get different nature of jobs. And this is the point where it actually really impressed me when he came back with his own example and he said, "Sir, I was driving a cab for 20 years before Uber came in. And Uber brought these smartphones which I had to use to now start being a part of the Uber fleet. I'm not an educated person. I don't know how to use a smartphone. So while I went and gave 10,000 rupees to Uber, got a smartphone, the next day I went to give it back. I didn't think I could do it." And of course, Uber didn't agree. He came back. His friends told him, "Okay, we'll help you learn." He ended up giving a 2,000 rupees party to his friends. They trained him for a week. And within 1 week, he was taking up Uber rides with a lot of ease. So moral of the story. This guy is, after joining Uber, he's been earning for 10 years, and he says, "I'm having a pretty good earning ever since I adopted or moved over to this kind of a cab hiring model." What is the intent of me just talking about it? And incidentally, it just happened yesterday. It's fresh on my mind. The person did not lack capabilities. He had been driving for 20 years. What did he lack? He did not have the mindset to adopt technology. He had that element of fear, and which is what prompted him to go back to Uber and return his smartphone and saying, "It's not for me." But then with a little bit of push, he actually got into that mindset where he thought, "No, I'm not giving up. I'm going to learn. I'm going to adopt technology." And 10 years has passed, and he's pretty happy that he took that decision. So that's what I'm trying to drive at. The AI skill code, and when we say cracking the AI skill code, it is definitely driven by capability. But it's also a change in mindset. And if I look at the workplace engineers today, it is not just building capabilities, but also changing our mindsets to adopt technology and leave aside that fear and move forward. So that's what I wanted to start with. Now, when we looked at this example of the Uber car driver, we saw that he had a skill gap, which he identified, and he was happy to adopt technology and fulfill that skill gap. If we look at our organizations today, our workplaces today, things are not much different. We've been working in an environment that required a particular set of skills. And we've learned those skills on the job as part of our education in the form of foundational skills. I've been going about doing our jobs. But suddenly, technology which has started to move at an extremely fast pace. The whole environment is transforming. Now, no organization, irrespective of how big or small they are, can completely cover for all the skill gaps. There are bound to be some skill gaps. Bridging that skill gap is the first thing that a leader, I'm stepping into the persona of a leader now, that's the first thing that a leader has to understand and address. The first step into bridging that skill gap is about understanding the value of human capabilities and the importance that machine intelligence brings to the workplace. So I like to put it like this. There is nothing, or when you look at a job or a task, there are things which humans are more adept at doing. And yet there are things which a machine may do much better and much faster and in a more productive manner than what humans could do. So essentially, the differentiation of what are human capabilities versus what machine intelligence can do is extremely important to able to create a collaborative environment where productivity increases, human capabilities are brought to the best of use. What are some of these capabilities that humans excel at? Now, creativity and empathy is one thing which I mentioned comes naturally to humans. Again, it reminds me of another conversation. And this time I wasn't part of the conversation. It's not one of my proud moments. I overheard a conversation sitting at one of the boarding gates waiting for my flight to board. And there are two technologists who are talking with themselves. They seem to be founders of a startup about to launch a product in market, but one of the key elements of the product is missing, and that is the user interface. It's a very interesting conversation that they were having, and I just got hooked into it. They're talking about what it will take them to get the user interface part of their product ready quickly so that they can meet the product launch time frame. And they have two choices which they are discussing amongst them. One is, since we don't have in-house skills, why don't we outsource it to a third-party vendor and let them develop the UI part for us? The second one says, why not just use AI tools? AI tools can generate the UI for us. All we have to do is give them some prompts, and the AI tool will generate that code for us. So why not do that? Now, the conversation went on. I mean, in the interest of time, I'm just shortening it. I'm continuously overhearing I'm very interested in what the final decision is going to be. And incidentally, during the conversation, they realized the importance of that human element. What is the UI going to do? The UI is essentially the part where a human is going to interact with their product. I'm sure everybody has heard the word usability. We know what usability means, right? So when we use the term UI for user interface, we always say UI/UX, which is the usability part of it. And what is usability? The ease with which a human can use that product is usability. So I'm glad when these people come to the conclusion that while an AI tool can help us build the UI or the user interface very, very quickly, the usability is going to take a hit. And that's going to be what is going to drive down their product sales, because a human user is not going to adopt it so easily. So evidently, expectedly, they went with the decision, let us outsource it to a company which specializes in creativity, which can build a good and usable interface. Maybe they'll use AI in driving the productivity and building the modules for the user interface, but the overall usability is something that they would do. So that's the essence of the message I'm trying to give over here. There are capabilities in humans which nobody can replace. That's creativity. That's empathy. The ability to take ethically correct decisions. There's a lot being said about fair, ethical, right, AI systems, but we're a long way to go to reach that point. Again, I was at this conclave where a group of CEOs are part of a panel, and one of the interesting questions comes up in that panel is, would you trust an AI system to identify or decide the budget for next year for itself? And every CEO on the panel said no. We don't trust an AI system to decide the budget for itself for the next year on its own. So that is where the element of ethics, control comes in, and that's what humans are good at doing. The third point which I want to talk about is complex problem solving. And this is a place where I would say, and at the risk of contradicting the beliefs that many of you may have, it's a level playing field. When you look at complex problem solving, a lot of us believe that machines with all the computational power and data that they carry, it's an easy task for them to solve complex problems. But I would say the context to solve a complex problem is all the more important, which is limited when we look at machine intelligence. So humans carry a very long and big context which helps them solve complex problems. And I would say that's an area which is still a level playing field between machines and humans. So from a leader persona, if I am creating an AI workspace, I have to keep all of this in mind and look at creating a human-AI collaboration in my workplace. And that's the key message that I'm trying to drive at. It's extremely important to build a strategy where we are enhancing collaboration. Collaboration between people, but also between people and AI systems. Okay, so that's the message I'm giving to the leaders of today. I'm saying balancing innovation, safety, and creativeness in our workplaces as they evolve in the AI era is as much important as it is to boost productivity. And that's where the fine trade-off and balance comes in. So how do you sustain creativity as automation increases in the workplace? As a leader, you promote diverse perspectives. You listen to people as they bring in different ideas and different perspectives, because that is the stepping stone to innovation. You help foster collaboration. You support your teams to think in a more creative fashion. And as a leader, it's extremely important to understand the importance and value of continuous learning, which is, I think, what Professor Sundar mentioned when he said foundational knowledge and continuous learning are the building blocks for a modern workplace today. So cultivating a learning culture is paramount to fostering adaptability and bringing in digital curiosity in the modern workplaces. And that requires leaders to be able to create a workplace where trial and error is not frowned upon, but it's promoted. At the risk of failing, you do want to promote trial and error. You want to create those safe spaces for innovation where experimentation is promoted. And you do want to promote continuous learning. Build it as a motivational point for your employees. Reward employees for continuous learning. And that will keep your employees motivated. I was particularly happy when Professor Sundar talked about the models of hire and fire, which industries have been following for a very, very long time. The idea being, when I have a project which requires a particular skill set, I go to market, hire people with the right talent, bring them to the industry, get the project executed, and then do away with them. That's one approach. It creates disruption. When I have to start a project, I go looking out for skills. I can't start on time. It creates an environment of demotivation, because my employees know after the job's done, I'm no longer needed. And it's a costly model, because when you go to market to hire just in time for the skills you need, you evidently end up paying higher salaries, higher compensations to get those people on the job. But the alternate model, which is to invest in continuous learning, I would say is a much better approach, considering the way technology is rapidly evolving. We cannot just keep going to market to hire just in time. What we need is a model where in-house and with support from academic institutions, we are driving continuous learning for our workforce, and skills are being built as a natural part of that process. So we are always ready to pick up any job, any project, and there's no disruption, and it also improves and boosts employee motivation. So that's the alternate model that I'm proposing as a model to hire and fire. So in this, a leader has a big role to play, not only in terms of leading by example, which is what I call as modeling learning behaviors. A leader has to show by example, but also by creating availability of learning resources for the workplace and fostering the learning culture by rewarding employees who participate in continuous learning. Okay, so since we've talked so much about reskilling and what a leader should do, let's switch back to the persona of an individual, of an employee, of a working professional, and talk a little bit about what are the skills that I should be focusing on in today's era. AI literacy does come first, I will not deny that, and I think everybody believes that having some element of AI literacy is mandatory irrespective of the industry or the workplace that we come from. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll realize that AI doesn't work standalone. It's not a technology which is self-sustaining or which is able to sustain itself without support from other technologies. So AI is backed by a whole lot of other skills which are necessary in the working professionals of today. When we look at how the government, for example, in the recent budget, I'm sure everybody heard about the tax holiday being offered to organizations willing to set up data centers in India. And the fact that yesterday we had an announcement by the Adani Group saying they're going to invest $100 billion into setting up data center infrastructure speaks volumes of the kind of skills that are going to be needed in future. Data center engineering, along with cloud computing skills, are going to be necessary skills for AI solutions to be delivered and deployed. Right? So while the entire world is very focused about building AI literacy and AI skills, I would just give you a bigger perspective by saying cloud computing skills are also equally important, and there's going to be a lot of need for engineers and professionals in that space. Equally important is the domain of cybersecurity, because while cybersecurity, like any other discipline, benefits from the use of AI, I can use a lot of AI techniques to build more secure solutions. The reverse is equally important. How do I secure my AI solution? So how do we all have used large language models today in various tools and various forms. But we know that these LLMs, they do suffer from vulnerabilities, and they are vulnerable to prompt injection attacks. They do suffer from biases. How do you address those? So in professionals who have skills in cybersecurity that can enable, build more secure AI solutions is going to be extremely important in an era where the entire industry is being driven by AI. You need secure AI solutions. And data analysis, data ethics, data science, data engineering, data in general forms the background to all AI. You need data engineering pipelines, you need data science to provide you with insights, and therefore is an essential skills needed in the workspace. So those are, in my view, some of the key skills that should be focused on in the AI era. Okay, so how should you focus on skill development? I think skill development is it's not just about going to an online platform and taking a course. It's not even about just going to a classroom and studying. It requires a combination to actually have effective upskilling and effective learning. And that requires focus on foundational knowledge. Tools come and go, skills change, but foundational knowledge stays with you. It's what helps you adapt very quickly. And I started by saying AI-ready professional is one who's adaptable, who can change quickly. It's the foundational knowledge which helps you become adaptable. practical hands-on learning, there's no alternate to that. You can have all the theoretical learning, but until it's backed with practical hands-on labs and practical learning, you don't remember things. You need a mentor all the time who could support you, guide you through that journey of education and help you with your problems, with what are better ways of learning. So mentorship support is extremely important. And then it's equally important that the system provides you continuous feedback in where you are going right, where you are wrong, how can you improve, where are the learning gaps, what could help fulfill them. So a system of continuous feedback is what is needed. And if you have those elements in your upskilling, in your learning, then that is what makes a learning effective. Now, without going into a lot of details, I'll just say that Bitch Pilani, as Professor Sundar mentioned, has been doing this for more than 4 decades now. And the model of work-integrated learning, which is a very unique model in itself, where the whole idea is to take learning to the workplace rather than the working professionals going to an academic institution and studying in a classroom environment, or whether all of us going to an online platform and studying via online resources. The idea with work-integrated learning is to take learning to the workplace of a working professional. And that's something I think we'll delve more upon in our discussions later as well, the importance of a work-integrated learning model. At this time, I'll just stop short by saying this is the model which we've been successfully implementing for decades now. And therefore, all our programs are what we call as work-integrated learning programs, spread across formal degree programs, certifications, from programs that are suited for seasoned professionals to ones which are focused to entry-level engineers who have just started their journey in the workplaces. There's something for everyone in Bitch Pilani work-integrated learning programs. And when I talked about skills like AI, cloud computing, data science, cybersecurity, there's programs across the breadth of these skill areas. Okay, I'll just conclude without talking more about it, but as I said, the idea and the central theme of this discussion today is about workplace readiness. And in a sense, I'm saying capabilities are important. There's no second views on it. But it's also important to have a change in our mindset. So it's a combination of capabilities and mindset which is going to be important for us. As individuals, that is what is going to make us adaptable and AI ready. As organizations, balancing innovation, balancing ethics and creativity is what is going to get us there. And as leaders, commitment to continuous learning, ongoing skill development, and a very strong leadership commitment to continuous learning is what is going to help the organizations of the future. So I'll just leave with a very tiny thought in your mind by saying, for ages, Indian organizations, and especially the services industry, we've benefited by playing the cost card. We've said services are cheap in a country like India. And we've played that cost card for decades. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at
most of this AI project depends heavily on the quality of data that you actually work with. The second aspect I consider foundation is about conceptual foundations underlying generative AI, right? So that's where the aspects like model training, for example, you should know, you should pretty be comfortable with what this model is trained at. Is it actually trained for classification? Is it trained for regression? Or is it actually trained to predict the next words or whatever, what it does, right? So what the model is good at. Is a model which is trained to do well for summarizing things, or is it actually trained good to code generation or whatever? So what this model is good at, what is the core competency of this particular model is something that you should know. And you should understand this from the very foundational aspect, right? Also, you should know why or what aspects this model is actually not pretty good at, right? Before you actually use a model, you should actually have this kind of understanding, right? How will this model perform when you actually see data which is out of distribution, OOD, or how sensitive the model that you actually use are to the prompts that you actually give, quality of prompts that you actually give, right? And you should, particularly when we talk about generative AIs, you should actually be understanding what is this hallucination about, right? When do you expect this hallucination happen? So this is, pretty important aspect. Also, the foundational aspect include, or foundational skills include, how do I, take an AI model and be ensure that I increase the trust when I actually use it within my organization? How do I work to ground my model, or how do I actually perform fine tuning, or decide when to use human review and things like that. So the second aspect that I consider foundational is an aspect that actually covers all of that. Foundations of generative AI, right? The third aspect that I consider as foundational is neither math nor any engineering. It's about way of working. When you actually work with AI, it entails a particular way of working with AI, right? So as Professor Gaurav mentioned, it's important that you actually frame your problem pretty well, right? You always go with a good framing of the problem, and you always define what success means when you actually use a model. Success metrics, these are pretty important. And once you have a good framing of the problem, you should have a sense of data. What is it I have? What data I have? I mean, is it pretty strong data or not strong? It all depends on how well you understood your data. So get the sense of your data, and then, what assumptions do we make that constitute the choice of model, the model sense, right? And what are those challenges involved? And then, I use my model and then, get my results and be able to validate. The cycle, right, be able to, frame your problem, have a data sense, have, sense of the kind of model that you actually use, their strengths, weaknesses, and then, AI gives you result, and then, how do I assess, assess the quality of the result? What should I do further? That mindset, way of working is something that I consider pretty foundational. The fourth foundation that I want to talk about, I'll be closing quickly. The fourth foundation I'll talk about is about, aspects of fair and responsible use of AI. As to, I consider this as foundational, pretty foundational, right? Very simple. I mean, don't share your, you use at many point in time, you would actually be using general purpose AI platforms, AI models, for your work. So it's important that you don't share your confidential data over any of these platforms for any purposes. You should be pretty careful with your data, right? Watch out for the bias there in the data that you actually used, right? So these are certain aspects that I actually want you to consider, and this is my fair and responsible use of AI constitute my fourth foundation. So quickly, the first foundation that I've talked about.
Data.
1 minute.
Yeah, you said data. I'm going to summarize for you. Data.
Cool.
So you said data is one of the key foundational principles. You said an generative AI foundational knowledge is extremely important.
Right.
You talked about a mindset change and way of working.
Yes.
And you talked about fair and responsible
Right.
AI. And those are, in your opinion, the four key foundational topics
foundations.
everybody should be focused on.
Right.
I think that's a very interesting thought, and that's leading me into, you've actually led me when you talked about mindset. I was pretty inclined to stop you then and there because it's leading me into my next question, which is actually about mindset change. And Professor Neha, I want to come to you and ask you, when you see professionals who started adopting AI, you can even take your own example if that makes more sense. Do you see a mindset change coming in these professionals?
Yes, Professor Nishit, absolutely. So, especially talking about AI application in healthcare, I have seen a change from blind trust on AI models to responsibly interpreting what the model results mean to us, right? We just don't take whatever the model gives us. We just don't accept their results as it is, right? So the shift is from a deterministic learning approach to a probabilistic learning approach, to actually thinking on how AI is not going to just take away my job as a doctor, but it is going to help me to make better decisions.
Professor Prakruti, same question for you. Have you observed this kind of a mindset change coming in the professionals?
Absolutely. So initially, most of the AI applications were developed by vendors, and the professionals wanted to stay away from it. But as we started, interacting with a lot of these organizations, and we did some basics of AI literacy or intro to AI kind of sessions, we explained to them how, again, human in the loop is very important. The subject matter expertise is extremely important. So till that, you won't believe it. It's either like a vendor will come develop a solution, and either it works, it doesn't work, it works sometimes. But they said it's 98% accurate. Then we explained to them that your defects are so minimal. So all the good data points are being captured. Your model might be statistically very impressive, but it's operationally useless because it's not capturing the defects.
That's an interesting point of view to look at, right? Professor Venkat, I want to come back to you. We've heard our panel experts talk about capabilities and mindset change happening. I want to touch upon a topic which is very close to you and which is something you are pretty expert as, in my opinion. And the question I have for you is, what is, in your opinion, a meaningful way for working professionals to learn? So as I said, there's always been focus on capability building, and now we are seeing a mindset change happening. But what is it that provides a more meaningful method of learning is where I'm coming to you with my question.
Quickly, the yesteryears, you know that the ANSYS and Linux and things like that were predominantly development started in the universities. Whereas in the case of AI, though OpenAI, we can say that in a way it started in the university, but the developments are predominantly happening in the industry. So the learning should happen in the industry. Does that mean that the educational institutions should just focus only on some general engineering and then send them to the industry to learn? No. They have to collaborate with the industry. And such a collaboration and the learning has to be very formal and structured. Because like Professor Sundar mentioned and like you mentioned, Nishit, that it's not about the tools that we are teaching, but the fundamental principles behind the tool. That is what the students and the future engineers should be learning. So I would consider, it's not a marketing pitch, but I would consider the work integrated learning as a model of education seems to be a better fit for learning technologies which are rapidly transforming and the happening is in the industry. So when you say work integrated learning, it is defined by 3 terms. One is it's collaborative between the organization, industry and the student. The second one is we integrate what we teach in the class with the authentic work experience. And the third thing is that it is structured. So it is integrated, collaborative and structured, and that's how the WIL is defined. And I think that will be the most appropriate according to my understanding.
Thank you, Professor Venkat. I really appreciate the way you put across work integrated learning as a set of 3 key ideas or concepts. I mean, I've been using that word since start, but I think that that was a very well structured way of defining work integrated learning. So I'm just going to stand to just create a sense of urgency between our panelists, because what I'm going to do now is to have a rapid fire set of questions for our panel members. And don't think, that's the idea of a rapid fire. Don't think, whatever comes top to your mind, just blurt out the answer, right? So we'll just go around the table and maybe reverse backwards. My first question is, Professor Vimal, one AI tool that you use daily?
ChatGPT, certainly.
ChatGPT, Neha.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT it is, okay. Professor Gaurav. TensorFlow, interesting. Professor Venkat.
Notebook LM.
Okay. Professor Prakruti. ChatGPT again, okay. So I'll start with you now this time. One AI myth which you want to break.
Yeah, so basically, don't go by accuracy, like
Yeah.
just what I said.
Yeah,
And
as I said, whatever comes to your mind.
okay, and instead, look at the confusion matrix.
Confusion matrix. Professor Venkat, you have,
Yeah, don't trust it blindly.
don't trust it
Blindly.
blindly. Don't trust it blindly. That's a good one, yeah. Professor Gaurav.
Don't apply it anywhere and everywhere. Where it makes business sense, apply it
So
there.
you're saying it's a myth that we can apply it everywhere, and that's the myth you want to break,
Aha, means apply where it makes
where
business
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Professor Neha.
I think the myth I want to break is AI is not here to replace doctors.
AI is not going to replace doctors. That's coming from a true healthcare expert. Professor Vimal, just winding up. What one myth do you want to break about AI?
Okay, I'll break one. Tool mastery is not AI mastery.
Tool?
Tool mastery is AI mastery indeed, but the myth is, getting mastered at tool. You assume that you become good at AI.
Okay, so
It's
you
not
don't
true.
become a master in AI if you
Yeah,
just master
true.
a tool. That's
True,
a good one.
true.
One mistake that people make when they learn AI. You can talk from your experience as well. One mistake that people make when they learn AI. Topmost on your mind.
So I started assuming that, with respect to the prompt that you give, right? AI will fix your prompt and get things done for you, but that's not true.
It's not. It's not always accurate.
it's not true.
Professor Neha.
I think one mistake I would like to highlight is deploying AI solutions without validating in your population. That means testing on one hospital and thinking it's the solution generalized for everyone to use is not right. It's a
Supervision and human validation is extremely important. Professor Gaurav.
Yeah. So I feel that using relevant ontology is very important.
Okay.
Because many a times we see that the AI solution shows some kind of hallucination. So if you use well-defined ontologies in that domain, or maybe you have other ways of maybe having human in the loop, something like that.
Right. So
that
use
can help.
proper ontologies and look
Yeah.
out for hallucinations.
Yes, yes.
Professor Venkat, your thoughts?
I think AI is what
Human?
humanizing AI.
Humanizing
is what-
AI, yes. Okay. Professor Prakriti.
Yeah, looking at AI as a one-time deployment is a mistake people make. It should be looked at as similar to an equipment or a process. It's a product, a lifestyle,
It's an
life cycle
It's
management.
an
is what-
evolving
yeah,
thing, and
exactly.
it cannot be seen as a one-time
Yeah.
deployment model. Excellent thoughts, I think. With that, I would like to come to the close of our panel discussion. Really want to thank our panel members for taking out time today and joining us. I really also want to thank our audience who stayed with us. I hope there are some good points that you'll take from our session today. And I'm sure there are a lot of discussion points. Unfortunately, we're short of time. Feel free to visit us at our booth. We are in hall number 6. We'll take the discussion forward maybe at hall number 6 because we have to vacate the conference hall. So we'll meet you at hall number 6, booth number 6.9. That's where we are. You know where to find us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.